And good evening, fellow travellers in space and time. Welcome to the writing stream. One and welcome all. Now, as you can see, the space background has returned. Very, very impressed with myself. I missed the other tune. Yes, Commander Jan here. Apologies that the tune cannot return at the moment because of a copyright troll that has been making my life a misery for the last few weeks and is still trying, unfortunately. I have reported it many times to YouTube, but the algorithm is the master of all. So anyway, hopefully the audio is okay. Tell me if it's okay or not, because I've been doing some major changes trying to make things more reliable. I know there's a thing. Oh, I can see my hat's slightly transparent. I haven't quite got the settings right. Look at that. I've got some sort of quantum anomaly going on. I'm actually very, very slightly transparent, aren't I? Hang on a minute. I didn't test it out with the hat. Hang on, let me fix that first. Bear with me, fellow travellers in space and time. Oh, it's very finicky, this green screen malarkey. Let me just tweak that up a bit. Is that going the right way? I have no idea if that's going the right way or not. Let's get back down the other way. Oh, that's wait. No, I think it's that that's causing the problem actually. Hang on. Let's tweak this one down a tiny bit. Nope, that's definitely going the wrong way. Oh, weird space there. Ah! Don't go too far. Oh, it's very finicky. Yeah, other way. Maybe a black hat or the black background isn't actually all that clever anyway, is it? I'm going to have to play around with that. Anyway, I'm going to have a slightly transparent hat. Most of me isn't transparent, that's okay. Right, before we go any further, it's Fred to Goes True. It's a very, 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 very poor 1980s special effect. That's what it is. Right, let's do the thing, because the thing is the thing, and we must do the thing. Right. Who's here? Dr. Quest MD is first in the chat. Yay, welcome to you, Dr. Quest MD. The Harkonnens are here, preparing to invade Arrakis. The Arrakis is here, freshly defending against the invasion of the Harkonnens. As always. You guys really need to sort that battle out. Okay, just get on with it. Get on with it. Sothy said Going Well is here. Git Shiver is here as well. Zedek81 is here. Excellent stuff. Commander J988 is here. Glenn is here. Commander Terraformer is here. Windy GB is here. Of course he is, because I'm here partly. Yes, very good. Commander Duskthorn is here. Oh wait, and we're going to make Drew hinge. I like the idea of that. Make it shaped like a hat. That would be awesome. And obviously very, very somewhat unstable. Have a Boo Boo is here. Ninduskrid is here. The Shadow Wyvern is here. Everybody's here. This is good. Good. Right, let me get catching up. Did I say Commander Duskthorn? Anyway, Dark Commander Duskthorn is good. It's good to see you here. I'm here in spirit. Actually, genuinely, I'm here in spirit. Yeah, look, I've got a transparent band on my hat. Most of my hat is okay, but some of it isn't. That's a bit weird. I drew a hinge pin. Yes, that's what I need. So the most of me isn't transparent. I shall have a play with that. There must be something, because this isn't green. This is a sort of brown colour. This little band. I don't know what it's for, but it's just part of the hat, right? So I don't know why that's gone transparent. But anyway, the space is back. Okay, the space background, which is a good thing. So anyway, so I've been rejigging. I do look a bit green. Yeah, the colour balance is probably a bit off. I need to play around with it. I had to. What I've done basically, in order to, I'm hoping, speed up and avoid some of the problems I've been having. Because I don't know if any of you are watching my because the audiences for my streams don't overlap that much actually. So I see different people on all the different streams depending on the interest, which is fine. There are a few of you who won't show up for everything, which is, I mean, you're mad. I don't know why you do that. Insane. But I ran into some audio problems with my Star Citizen stream, and what it basically comes down to is my PC is too complicated, because I use my PC for streaming, for playing computer games, for audio recording, for video editing, and also a few other bits and pieces as well. I've got too much software, and I think what was happening is it was interacting, and occasionally various bits of software were mucking about with other bits of software. So what I've done is I've now dedicated this PC that we are now using today as like a streaming games machine only. Okay, at least that's its primary purpose. It's the plan being that I set it up and then I don't have to fiddle with anything to make it work. Okay, because the problem is the audio settings for streaming aren't the same as the audio settings for recording audiobooks or doing voiceovers and stuff, right? However much I tried, and then if I fire up my MIDI editing suite, it does slightly weird stuff to the the sound drivers and all sorts of stuff, and it's just an accident waiting to happen. And of course, what it did is it live on my Star Citizen stream. It happened. It just busted, and it took me like 5 minutes to fix it, which is very embarrassing and not very professional. So and I do, believe it or not, I know I don't give this impression on my streams, but I do try to be professional. Okay, I do try to do a good job. Evidence to the contrary. So what I've actually got over there, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's sort of lurking down there, waiting to be used. It's down there. Actually, no, you can't see it. It looks really wintry out there with the green screen. Look, I'm putting the fabric of the universe back. That's an amazing special effect. It looks almost like it's winter out there, but that's of course because there's a filter on the thing. Anyway, there's a PC down there underneath the keyboard, which is now dedicated to doing audio books and voiceover recordings and things like and MIDI editing and sound stuff, right? The idea being that I can leave this PC in one configuration and I can leave that PC in the other configuration. It was all made out of spare bits that I had, so I didn't have to buy anything. So I've now got two mics, one that's here, which is for streaming. I've got another mic over there, which is sounded up and done stuff for, in order to do the audiobook. So the idea being that I don't have to change anything. That's the plan. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that's how it's going to work. So did I steal one of my son's? Well, my eldest son has just bought himself a new relatively recent, a new PC, because his old PC was an i5 with a let me get this right, an i5 with a GTX 1050. So yeah, basically Wintermute says too long. Drew's got two PCs. That's pretty much it, really. But it's not me if I don't give it. It's got to have a story. This is a writing stream on Wintermute TV. It's got to have a story, right? Actually, it can't be too long didn't read, because we aren't reading, right? So it's too long didn't listen. So it needs to be TLDR. TLDL. Too long didn't listen. or some other shorthand. Okay. So anyway, so my son upgraded his PC. The other PC was going spare, so I pinched it, and I've converted it into an audio editing suite. And I've got a little DAW unit and various other bits and pieces like that, to make sure that that audio side of stuff is a bit more streamlined. So fingers crossed that come September, when my youngest son hopefully goes to university and the house becomes quiet again, then the audio recording stuff will pick up speed once more. So that's basically I've made that progress this week, so that's good. Half expected Drew to say he built a second PC out of spare VW golf parts. Well, no. Patrick Dunn Movie says, "Will you marry me?" No. I'm already married. I can't afford to get married again. B, I think my wife would probably have something to say about that. That's enough reasons. It gets great bandwidth and mileage, apart from when it breaks down. But anyway, so that was that. So writing wise this week, how well have I been doing there? Well, I haven't made much progress word count wise. In fact, I've gone backwards, which some of you may have seen my Twitter saying made lots of progress today, deleted 1,000 words. So now some of you may think, hang on a minute. You need to put more words into a book in order to finish it, and you are correct. You do need to do that, but sometimes you make an editing mistake, and so I've looked through, and unusually for me, what I've done is I've improvised, and I shouldn't have improvised. Okay, I had a plot in my my document. For some strange reason, I didn't refer to it correctly, and I started writing what was actually quite a good scene. Which basically wasn't anything to do with the plot. So when I got to the end of it, I thought, that's brilliant. Right, I went back to the plot and went, oh damn, that's not what happened. Oh, the stars have disappeared. Why have I've lost my stars. Where's my space backdrop? Oh, I probably haven't put it on loop or something. Oh yeah, there we go, loop. There we go, right. Back again. Totally professional, as you can do. Yeah, so get shiver. That's exactly basically what we ended up in the black hole. So that's what happened to me. So I've had to basically cut that scene out and stuck it into the not used doc file, which I've told you about in the past. And maybe it'll be useful in the future. Don't ever throw anything away. This is really, really important. Don't ever throw anything away, because you never know when it might come back. So that's the thing. But yeah, so I kind of went backwards. But what I also did then is I went back through the plot and thought, I'm not entirely happy with some of this. It felt a bit weak. So I've actually gone back and I've been playing around with the plot as well. And I changed a few bits around, which I think makes it stronger. It doesn't mean that I have to rewrite very much, a few little tweaks, but because it's early days still on this book. But I have done that as well. So I feel like I've corrected my trajectory, and now I can kind of hopefully forge ahead again a little bit. But word count wise, I've gone backwards. So I was at 64,000 words, and now I'm only at 63,000. So yes, but that's right is life. I'm afraid that's what happens. And I think occasionally sometimes it's fairly normal to have a kind of a backward step when you're writing. You just don't want it too often, because otherwise you run out of words. Yeah. So I actually started waffling while I was writing. I was off plot, which is unusual for me. I don't normally do that. And there we go. So there we are. Lucky Luigi, good evening, Drew. Always good to see you, Lucky Luigi. Thank you very much for popping in. So tonight we need to crack on. Now this is a topic which is I am by no means an expert in. I mean, I always say that because I'm not an expert in anything. So Jan here says, I'm at the hardest part of the writing journey, choosing a release date for my next novella. This may not be the hardest part. Well, you're late, Lucky Luigi. You're 10 minutes in. Sometimes I do get to the topic early. I think last week it took me like 25-30 minutes. But sometimes we get there early. And I've streamlined my PC, and I've done this and I've done that, and there we go. We're up to date. So choosing the release date, just choose something and just stick a pin in the map or something. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Do all that sort of stuff. So marketing. Okay, so we've in this series of extremely informative Twitch streams and YouTube videos for you, those of you watching offline, we have been examining all the bits and pieces that make a novel. I should really be looking at the camera, but I want to look at the chat, which is over there. Sorry, so if you're wondering why I'm kind of sometimes looking up there, which is hello everybody, and sometimes looking over here, that's where the chat is and that's where the camera is. Which one I'm supposed to be looking at. Feels more natural to look at the chat window because that's kind of where you guys are. That makes sense. But from your perspective, it looks like I'm not actually facing you. So what I really need is a camera where the chat is, but of course then I wouldn't be able to see the chat. So, hey, what am I supposed to do? Right. So we've been studying, or I've been waffling, either way. On all the various subjects about writing books. So we did the ideas and the world building and the editing and the construction, and then last week we did publishing. Again, all the options there, right? It's introvert friendly. We don't feel like we're having to make eye contact on. It is actually watching things like this is kind of introvert friendly. Actually, somebody did mention actually on the internet, about resources for introverts, and it's like how to be more, I don't know, how to be more influential, how to be more dramatic, how to be more confident, how to put across your point of view, and all these sort of things. As if introvertism, if that's a word, was a bad thing that needed correcting. You never see any courses for extroverts, do you? Like how to be less irritating. How to be less loud, how to just shut up and let everybody listen to some music, how not to dominate the room when there's a party. Never see courses like that, do you? Well, as if there's something wrong with extroverts. It's always no, the introverts need to be more outgoing and more in your face and not be so shy. It's like, no, that's the positive thing. Introverts unite. Then actually, we don't want to do that. Introverts hang around in the same room, in the corners, not very close to each other. Dear. So I don't know. It's just one of the things I'm. A lot of people are very surprised actually to find out that I'm an introvert, and that's basically because they don't know me very well. And and I quite like sitting in front of a camera like this, chatting away to you guys, because I'm in my room. Okay, I'm on my own, really. All you guys are is a bunch of text on the screen. I've met a few of you actually in real life, but most of you I haven't, and an awful lot of you are like so far away that the chances of me actually meeting you in real life it's quite difficult. Advice for introverts: wear a hat. Yes, very good. I like doing this, but it is something that takes a bit of energy for me to do. It's not. When I get to the end of my stream, I'm like, hey, that was fun, but then I'm going to bed now. Have a relax. So it does take energy to do these sort of things, and you hear about streamers who burn out by doing too much streaming. So I've always been a little bit wary of that, because I stream usually when I've got my act together and everything's working about 8 hours a week, but that's actually a day's work if you think about it, which is quite a bit of time. Whilst I wouldn't call it work because I don't I don't put that level of professionalism into it, I'm afraid. Sorry guys, and it's fun. I am having fun, but it does, there's a certain level of stress involved with it in making the technology work and turning up on time and making sure things are plugged in and you've got some stuff to do and you've got a vague idea of what you're talking about, and I appreciate it is a vague idea, but so there's some effort involved, and that effort takes energy, right? Takes energy away from things that you would otherwise be doing, like lounging in front of the telly having a snooze or whatever it happens that you would otherwise be doing. You've got to bear that in mind. But I am an introvert, okay? I'm not an extrovert. If you give me a choice between, right, can I put my feet up and just watch a movie this evening, or go out to have a party, it's evening in front of the TV every single time. That's just me. And in order to do these things and express myself online and do all the other bits and pieces I do, I need to take time out. Time out for me is, well, it used to be taking the dog for a walk, but the dog is so old now that it's not really up for a walk anymore. So I have to go either on my own or my wife will come with me sometimes. We'll just go for a walk in, nice peace and quiet. And that's just the way things are. So that's introverts versus extroverts. But I'm always curious that introverts are always sort of targeted. Sounds a bit harsh. But advise that they need to up their game to be more extroverted. But you never get anything for extroverts saying, "Why don't you just shut up for a bit, become a bit more introverted?" I don't know. It's just one of those things. Anyway, that's a total distraction from the topic. So marketing. Okay, so we talked last week about publishing your book, right, or your short story, whatever it is that you published. Okay, and you've got multiple ways of publishing it. And Now it doesn't stop there. Now the hard work begins. Now you think it's been hard work up till now, right? Because you've written the damn thing, you've plotted it out, you've done the backstory, you've done all the you've checked it, you edited it, blah, blah, blah. But you even got it published. Maybe even with a real publisher, you know what I mean? Like a traditional publisher. You might think at that point, right, now I just sit back and the money rolls in, right? No. Sorry guys, that's not how it works. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, okay, if you've self-published it, yeah, I get it. Okay, you're gonna have to do some work, right? And if you've got a small indie publisher, yeah, maybe you're gonna have to do a bit of work. And if you vanity published it, as we kind of discounted the other week, yeah, maybe you can have to do work. But surely a traditional publisher, right? A big traditional publisher is gonna have a massive marketing budget, and they're gonna put your book up on billboards, and it'll be at the airport, and it'll be in WH Smith's, and all the it'll be in Barnes and Noble, and all the outlets that everybody recognises, right? No, it's not how it works. At least not anymore. Okay, now in the olden days, maybe it was a bit better because there were less places to advertise. The problem is, marketing is incredibly expensive. You want the average market. I mean, the thing is, being in business. Okay, now the fundamental rule of being in business, in any business, and I'm going to simplify this a little bit. Okay, admittedly, the fundamental rule of business is that you spend less money advertising your product than you do selling it. All right. This is the golden rule of business. If you obey that rule, then you've got a chance of being successful as a business. Okay, but if you spend more money than you on advertising your product than you actually you receive in sales of your product, i.e., revenue, profit really. Revenue will do at this point, and then that's bad for business. Okay, so there is a limited marketing budget, even for a traditional publisher, like a big one, okay, and it's compounded. It's compounded by you're not the only person they have on their books, right? So you're not the sole, author that they've got to promote. They've got to promote probably several books, and that might be, how many books are they publishing that year? They've got to split their marketing budget between all those. If you're a new author, they may not favour you with a marketing budget, because if you're publishing it, let's say you've been really successful, you've got yourself Hodder and Stoughton or Penguin Books or something has published your novel, but in the same year, you're up against Alistair MacLean or somebody, J.K. Rowling or somebody famous. Guess who's going to get the lion's share of the marketing budget, right? Because guess who's going to sell more books? And that's how it works in business, okay? So you're even with a traditional publisher, okay, the marketing budget for you is going to be very small, okay? Now, what they will try to do is get you into, bookshops, like in the UK it might be Waterstones or something like that, for you to do a book signing, and there might be some online stuff, social media wise, and there might be the odd advert here, there, and everywhere. The chances of you getting a major billboarding, across all the tube stations and the railways and at the airports is vanishingly small. Okay, because that costs some serious money that they'd have to recoup somehow, and they're just very, very unlikely to do it on a first-time author. Okay, so what you need to be able to do to be really, really successful as an author is to already be really, really successful as an author. Okay. Now you may have noticed the flaw in this plan, and this is the problem. Okay, the only way to be a really successful author is to already be a really successful author, and there's an obvious problem with that that thing. Now this is a problem faced by the traditional publisher because there's only a limited marketing budget, right? Now if you are on your own, you've done it yourself, then nobody's going to do any marketing for you other than yourself. Okay, and even with an indie publisher, okay, they just don't have the money. Okay, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the contacts, they don't have the ability to get anything huge going. Okay, and if you vanity published it, nobody's going to notice your book anyway, and you probably don't care because you've got your copy of your book and the job's done. So all of these things, so. Marketing is incredibly expensive, and there isn't much money to go around. That's the first observation. That's the first thing you need to know about this particular part of the problem. The second thing that's really, really important about marketing is if you leave your marketing plan to the point which, hey, I've published my book, you're too late. Okay, you're too late. You need to start quite a lot earlier. You need to be hype. I know we all hate the word hype, but there's no alternative to it. Okay, if you've got a book coming out, you need to be telling people 6 months in advance of the book coming out that there's a book coming out, so that there's some sort of awareness. Well, the publication date must be coming up about nowish. If you can sync your publication date to a major holiday, and the best ones really are Christmas and just before summer. The reason Christmas is good because it's Christmas, right? And people tend to buy things for either themselves or other people. And summer is basically people go, I'll buy a book for the summer holes and read it on holes. Okay, there's a massive spike in book sales before Christmas and before the summer holidays, so that's a good time to release a book. So there's a top tip. All right. But you need to start your marketing way before your book's even ready. So you might be in the throes of editing at this point, or you might have just finished the first draft or something. That's the point to actually start the marketing campaign. But it's a lot of effort. Okay, it's a lot of effort. How do you? So what am I saying? What do we mean by marketing? Basically, marketing is trying to advise the people who would likely buy your thing that your thing actually exists. Let's try and simplify it. Okay, that's basically what you're trying to do. There's let's take the UK for example, because I know what the numbers are, and you can scale it up or down to the world. Right, in the UK there are 65 million people. Right, 65 million people. Now, out of that population, quite a few of them can't read. Quite a few of them don't read. Quite a few of them, have never picked up a book in their lives. So you can clearly discount them, all right? So I don't know what percentage of the population is actually kind of actively reading books, but it's probably only a few percent, I would say. Then there's the people who will actually buy your book because they might not be a fan of the genre you write in or whatever it happens to be, or they might only buy books that they recognise from authors that they know, etc, etc, etc. So it becomes quite small, quite fast. And what you're trying to do is somehow find those people and basically say, I've got a book that you would probably be interested in reading, and it's coming out here. Now there's lots of little things that you can do. So obviously there's social media, so there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, and 6 billion other social media things. Social media itself is probably worth a stream all of its own, because it's a complicated thing. But suffice to say, you can set up hashtags on Twitter, and you can join in writing communities, which we all do. The am writing hashtag and the writing community hashtag on Twitter are quite well populated things. They tend to be a little bit more US focused in my experience than UK, but they're kind of worldwide things. You can set up a writers page on Facebook and do that sort of thing. You can set up a blog on your website. You can set up a newsletter that you publish out every so often. And those are all worthy things, and I would recommend that you consider them as part of your marketing campaign, because what you kind of do need to do over time is generate a following of people, if you like, that will, so Drew's got a new book out, I'll get that because I liked his last one. That sort of thing. That's what you want to aim at, is a guaranteed bunch of people who will go basically, I like his stuff or her stuff, I'll get the next one. All right. Right, absolute chonker seller's weapon. Yeah, that's exactly right. Jammy 1339. Hello, I'm a bit late to the game, as literally watching through your Frontier Elite 2 playthrough. You shall see me become the Celestial Warrior. That's an amazing moment. And then you can get onto Frontier Elite 3. No, Frontier First Encounters, which we had to hack in order to finish the game. So all sorts of fun. But you can't. The problem is you can't build a social media following from scratch. You need to start, and you need to put a lot of effort into it. And what you can't do on social media is basically blat everybody going, buy my book, it's awesome. Because you'll probably find people will get a little bit annoyed by that, right? So don't do that. What you've got to kind of do is interact with people who are interested in the same sort of topics you are, right? Marketing plan: host a regular Twitch stream about writing. Well, I mean, if I'm being totally nefarious, yes, maybe that's my amazing master plan. But I like discussing things like this with other writers, because I haven't got all the ideas. But it's fun to interact and talk to people about the sort of problems that we all face, because everybody faces the same problem. You see a lot of people on Twitter going and Facebook going, subscribe to my newsletter and I'll give you the 10 secret tips about how to be successful at marketing. And I'm kind of like, no, that's naughty. Because it's not true, right? There are no 10 secret tips to marketing. You can only hope to strike lucky. Now this is all a matter of luck, unless you've got a lot of money. Because if you've got a lot of money, you can saturate the world with adverts and links about your thing. It is what are the top 10 secret tips? Well, top 10 secret tips. Tip number 1: there are no top 10 secret tips, right? There you go. You didn't even have to subscribe to my newsletter to get that, all right? That's you figured out my evil plan. What is tip 2? Refer to tip 1. as to all the other tips, refer to tip 1. Play game with audience. Audience buys books, says Rackler, once every fiscal year. Yes, that's right. Rackler's, look, there it is. Look, there's Rackler there. That one there. Go get it. I've been subscribed to Drew's news. Yeah, so my problem, and this is the problem. Joking aside, newsletters take time to write, right? And the problem is, I refuse to send out a newsletter if I haven't actually got any news, right? So I could send a bunch of stuff. Have you got your copy of Shadewood from 3 years ago? Yes. Okay, well, there's no point me sending out a newsletter unless I've got some actual news. I haven't finished anything recently, so I have no news. So I should really be doing something. Drew was at LaveCon, go and meet Drew or something like that. But that just seems to me to be a bit too cynical. I can't do that kind of cynical stuff. My newsletter sort of founders a little bit because I don't put anything in when I have actually got anything to say. I suppose you could. I could remind people to come along to my Twitch and YouTube, but that again feels exploitative, so I don't. It's never stopped. Yeah, so some of that stuff is good. I mean, what I do try to do is I do try to interact with people on Twitter, and I do try and interact with people on Facebook a bit. But of course, you can lose a lot of time to social media if you're not careful. Time that would actually be better spent writing a book, or doing something else. So those are obvious and I suppose relatively cheap things that you can do. Okay, but they're cheap in terms of the cost, but they aren't necessarily cheap in terms of your own time. So be aware of that. Now, I do recommend authors have a website. Now, I'm shameless plug. Here's my website. If it works, yeah, it does. Okay, so Drewception. I've switched monitors around. Sorry about that. What's it doing? Let's put that over there for a moment. There we go. So my website basically is kind of a brochure. And look at that, it automatically advances and all sorts of things. So it basically advertises the books, which is a bit kind of if somebody hasn't stumbled across my books and wants something. Wants a website that advertises at them, that's kind of it. And so this rolls round, and basically if you want to find out a little bit more about each of the books, then it tells you, and then it shows you the kind of the covers of each book with a bit of background. So the idea is it's kind of a brochure, right? You can find out a bit about me. There I am. You can find out a bit about what I'm working on, which is my amazing plan, which I hope I hit, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. You can find out about what I'm working on at the moment. You can find out about previous books. You can find out about previous series. You can find out about the Elite Dangerous stuff I did. You can join up to my newsletter, and you can find my community on Twitch, which is what we're at now. And that's about it. That's about all my website does at the moment. I have played around with merchandising things as well. That is something that you can do. But I haven't spent that much time on it, and I need to go back. Right, let me switch that off, otherwise that's going to be really weird. It depends what you want to show. What I'm trying to show with my website, I suppose, is I'm taking my work seriously. I try to make my website look professional, i.e. it's quite smart, it's quite modern, it works on mobiles, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so I think you've got to set yourself a quality bar, right? So people go to the website and go, oh, okay, well this actually looks quite well presented. This is, it works. It looks nice and tidy. It's not like a 1990s under construction website. It looks smooth and looks reasonably professional. I think that's important. It should basically say, here are all my books, and here's a link if you want to buy them. It should give some information about the books that you wouldn't necessarily maybe get from the blurb. You can dive a little bit deeper if you want to. And anything else you want people to be able to do, like here's my newsletter, here's where you find me on social media. If you want to hook up me, you can send me a contact. Things like that. I think if you're an author and you want to take yourself seriously, because given it's an online world, I think you need that sort of stuff, okay? So I think having a website which is a sort of slightly interactive brochure is essential. Okay, I think you need that, and ideally, I would recommend you get www.yourauthorname.com if you can, because it's kind of the default. Now I'm kind of lucky here in the sense that Drew Wagar is a slightly unusual name. If your name is John Smith, or what's the American equivalent of John Smith? It's kind of John Doe, isn't it? John Doe, that's right. If your name is John Doe or John Smith, then or overseas Mr. Singh or something like that, then yes, okay, you can maybe a pen name is actually a better thing. So have a think about what you want your online persona to be, and try and keep it consistent. Okay, try and keep it consistent. So basically, I've always gone drewwager.com and twitter.com/Drew Wagar and facebook.com/Drew Wagar, and everything is Drew Wagar. Okay, I try and keep the kind of the brand, if you like, succinct, and I try and use all the same kind of graphics and fonts as much as I can across all those different things. So if you look at my YouTube channel and my Twitch channel and everything else channel, they should have very, very similar graphics, and I try and update them all at the same time. So I think that's another top tip for your social media presence. Try and think of it as a brand and keep it consistent across all of them. So when people come across it, they go, yeah, I remember seeing that on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever it happens to be. It just aligns it all together. Okay, so and I'm fortunate again with my name, Drew Wager. If you, I won't do it again because it kind of was a bit weird, wasn't it? But if you look at Drew Wager online, if you type Drew Wager in, there are no other Drew Wagers on the internet. You know, for probably like 15, 20 pages of Google search results, because it's just me, right? Because I've been on the internet advertising myself for a long, long time, and there's only been one other Drew Wager of note in the entirety of the internet, as far as I've worked. He got murdered. Very suspicious, yeah, I know. So I think some of you know this story, but basically what happened was I went away. It was years ago. I went away on holiday. Might be even 15 years ago now, and I went to America, and a Drew Wager in America got murdered. Literally, I kid you not. Okay, Drew Wager got murdered, and my work colleagues were like, "What?" Because they came up on the internet. Drew Wager's been murdered. And all my colleagues at work knew I was on holiday, just, you know, natural. There can't be many Drew Wagers in the world, right? And of course, I came back in the office completely nonplussed. Yeah, I didn't know anything about this, and oh my God, he's alive! I thought he'd been murdered. What? It's like. So yeah, so the only other Drew Wager out there was murdered. There can be well, it wasn't. Nobody will believe me, of course, but it wasn't me. I didn't murder him. So as far as I am aware, that I am the only Drew Wager of note on the internet, which is quite a useful thing to have. But you may not have that advantage, right? You may not have that advantage in terms of your name. It must be a Cylon, yes. There can't be any other Drew Wagers in the world. There can be only one. So that was a bit weird. Unfortunately, Wager is enough of an unusual surname anyway to start with, and does I own a broadsword? Yes, and I've been around for many millennia, just biding my time. A bit drastic just to get the domain name. It was really. So fortunately, drewwager.com is mine. Now it isn't necessarily all that cheap, but it's not super expensive. But it is a cost. Okay, it is a cost. Now I'm fortunately, I have my own limited company because of other things that I've done in the past, so I can put things like that down as an expense and claim them through my company effectively. But you may not be in that position yourself, so you may have to pay for these things out of your own kind of personal account. And if you're doing that sort of thing, then it's a cost. Okay, you need to bear that in mind, because it's another thing you have to spend money on, right? And your domain name will need to be re-registered every 2 or 3 years. You'll need to pay for a website hosting company every year to go along with that. So it's an expense, right? It's an expense. It's something that's going to cost you money to be there. Now, having a Twitter account and a Facebook account is free, effectively. But that only gives you the kind of basic stuff, and you kind of got to find a way to encourage people to find you on Facebook. And the problem you find, and this is the big problem with marketing, right, is that you're up against everybody else, because one of the wonderful things about the internet is it has democratized access to a worldwide audience. Okay, but alongside that, the problem with the internet is it's democratized access to the audience, to the worldwide audience. So everybody and their dog can do this, right? And many dogs are better than humans at doing this. I'm convinced. My dog isn't, but many dogs I'm sure are. The problem is there's a sea, okay, a literal sea of millions of other people on the internet trying to flog their books because they've written a book. Okay, you go onto Twitter and you look at the number of people who are posting on the am writing hashtag or the writing community hashtag. There are thousands of them, thousands, tens of thousands, millions, right? My dog is good at giving you ideas, just not marketing. My dog's not very good at marketing. So the problem is there's an awful lot of other people out there doing the same as you. Okay, and the trick is, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you differentiate yourself? And going back to that, what are the amazing top tips for success in marketing? There aren't any. Okay, so anybody who's claiming on the internet, here are the top 10 guaranteed things that will make you successful on the internet, it's just slick 50. It's just what do you Americans call that? Snake oil. I don't know what snake oil is. I've never oiled a snake. I can't imagine it's a very safe thing to do, to oil a snake, but or just BS. Yeah, it is literally BS. So don't get suckered into. All they basically are trying to do there is sign you up to their newsletter, so they can basically say, oh, thank you for signing up to my newsletter about marketing. Here's some junk that I'll send you, and by the way, you're now on my newsletter. Fortunately, things like that are now somewhat illegal in Europe because of things like GDPR, but they're not illegal in the States. Okay, so bear that in mind. You can get suckered into US things that basically. So for those of you who don't know, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, very exciting. Basically, in Europe, basically says you're only allowed to sign up. You can only get people's emails to sign them up for a newsletter if you declare specifically what they're signing up for. I.e., you can't say, here's a free thing, and by the way, I'm signing you up to my newsletter because you've received it. You have to specifically say you are being put on a newsletter. Okay, it's illegal in Europe to do a bait and switch, basically. It's not illegal to do that in the States. All right, so bear that in mind. There's a difference of European data protection law. Okay, so in the UK, you're not allowed to do any of those. Click here to to specifically opt out either. That's illegal as well. So you have to specifically opt in as well. And in effect, unfortunately, a side effect of GDPR is all those wretched cookie notices, because cookies can track you, of course, and you must sign up to accepting that. So it has, GDPR is good and it's bad. It has flaws. There's no doubt about it. So snake oil salesman, says Glenn, is basically referring to an old con artist who could cure all medications made of strange things, sometimes alcohol and drugs, as a travelling salesman. Okay, there we go, snake oil salesman. Buy my book where I tell you the 3 steps to becoming successful. Exactly right. So all that sort of stuff. So all of those things on the internet where they basically say, sign up here to get your free marketing guide. You're not going to learn anything from them. Okay. You're not going to learn anything from them at all that you don't already know. Okay. Now the things that I think are important. So do have a website, do have social media accounts, and with your social media account, don't just blat on them, I've got a book, buy it. Okay, gotta have what people find, what I find most interesting on Twitter and Facebook is that I get into conversations with people about writery type things. So I hardly ever, if you look through my Twitter feed and my Facebook feed, and even on these streams, right, I hardly ever talk. I do talk about my books, but I hopefully don't try to talk about selling them. Buy them over here. Here's the thing, because that turns people off. Okay, that's not what they come to Twitter for. What they come to Twitter and Facebook for is to maybe find out a bit more about you, the person, right? Okay, so I came across this book, and somebody else recommended it, or I heard about it, and I'm going to do a Google search on it, and they find your Twitter page and they find your Facebook page, and what I found is you're something to get the weirdest of weird questions. Oh, I watched your thing on YouTube and I thought that was quite funny, and I bought your book. Oh thanks. So you don't know necessarily how it's all connected up, but don't be direct at basically bashing people over the head with, I've got a book and you need to buy it. Okay, because you just won't get any followers that way. So you've got to be much more subtle. Okay, you've got to entertain people a bit. You've got to have a conversation. You've got to have some interesting opinions or tell some jokes. So I'm very clear on my Twitter. What do I say on my Twitter? I mean, I think my Twitter bio is something slightly tongue in cheek. What do I say? I said science fiction fantasy author, Twitch partner, blah blah blah. Likes dogs, cars, astronomy, space games, vinyl tape, the 1980s, dad jokes and puns. There you go. So that's me, right? Okay. So if that's not the kind of person you want to talk to, then you're not going to follow me. Okay. It's got nothing. It doesn't really mention my books other than it says I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. Okay. So yeah, I don't have links. I think there's a link to my website in there if you want to dig out. But you've got to be a bit subtle. Okay. If you go direct with into social media with buy my book, it's brilliant. Then you're just not going to go there. I should mention my video books. It's probably a character limit, and I had to compress it. Like blinking and having lungs, or the things that humans enjoy. So all that sort of stuff. So plus one dad jokes. It's very important. Jan, I worked it out a while ago. I need to sell about 1,200 copies of my book at full price in order to break even. Any takers? But that is marketing, I suppose. Farfons, Drew, love the writing stream, can never catch it live because of work, just wanted to say thanks for giving Monday something to look forward to. Oh, that's very kind of you there. So, well, I mean, I do this partly to bust some of the myths, because I haven't got too much of an axe to grind here, okay? As I've probably mentioned before on these streams, I write because I like writing. And, the ultimate end of that is I have published some books in various different ways. And I've made a bit of money out of them, okay? Not so much that I've gone, I really should really do this. I like it and I find it fun and I find it interesting to play around in this environment. But it's soul-destroyingly hard work to try and make any money out of writing. Okay, soul-destroyingly hard. You'll be far better off becoming a plumber or a carpenter or something, right? It'll be far less stress, okay, if you're trying to make a living out of it. I've mentioned in the past I've gone full-time writing, and the only reason I've gone full-time writing is because I've had a career in the past that's put me in a position where I don't need to worry so much about how much money is coming in. Okay, now not everybody's going to be in that position, and if you're not in that position, don't give up the day job. All right, it's the most important piece of advice I can give you. Don't give up the day job, because you'll need the day job to actually put some money on the, some food on the table and keep a roof over your head. Writing is not that thing, right? It just isn't. Okay, so write, unless you are one of the 0.0001% of people who make it spectacularly successful, and let's be honest, another big myth being busted here. Okay, those people got lucky. Okay, they got lucky. Okay, it's not talent. It's not brilliant writing expertise. It's not the great ideas. It's not the brilliant plots. They got lucky. And if any of the most successful writers in the world were honest, which a lot of them of course aren't, they would admit that. It's luck. Okay, right place, right time, right combination of events. Okay, it is not down to your skill as a writer, really. Okay, it really isn't. You can be brilliant at everything and be unlucky, and you'll never get anywhere. Okay, it is, where does the lightning strike? So, and so there's a myth busted. Okay, you can increase your odds. Okay, of being successful. You can increase your odds of being successful, and the only way to do that is to keep writing and sticking stuff out there and working at your marketing. Okay, so all of those things will improve your odds of being spotted by somebody or having that connection that really catapults you up the sales charts or whatever it happens to be. But it is luck. Okay, it is luck, and there's tens of thousands of people out there who've stopped because they just didn't get anywhere, and the only way to be successful is to keep going. Okay, the only way to be successful is to keep going and not stop doing what you do. Being serious for a second, shock, I know, but I've seen a lot of advice saying that traction on sales starts to pick up mostly after you've published a few books. Lots of importance placed on building a back catalogue. There is some strength to that. I think somebody said your next book sells the last book that you wrote, or something like that. I think it's definitely easier because if you've managed to get through a back catalogue, you've slogged your way through writing 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it happens to, these books, then you've probably got a bit of brand recognition by that point. And you've got a bunch of people who are at least aware that you write books and will be, okay, well, there's another one coming out, I'll go get that. I've had people buy my Shadewood books on the strength of my Elite Dangerous books, and I've had people buy my Elite Dangerous books on the strength of the Shadewood books, and I've had the same with Lords of Midnight and vice versa around all the others. So it does help. There is cross-pollination between the books that you write. That is a thing. How strong it is, I'm not sure. I think it helps. I wouldn't say it was crucial to success, but I'm sure it does help. Yeah, I think that's quite good. I've met reader friends who won't buy a series of books until all the books in the series are completed. Yes, so I've had a friend of mine say that to me. Fortunately, he has now bought my book. But I had somebody who said, I'm not reading them all until they're finished, Drew, because last author I did that with, they snuffed it before they finished the books. And I said, well, I'm not going to... I'm not planning on stuffing it. I've seen people say that, and that's the George R.R. Martin effect, isn't it? Because he still hasn't finished Game of Thrones. In fact, I can't think of another series where the author's been successful in writing a series, getting his series televised, and the television series has successfully concluded, even if you didn't like the ending particularly much, before the author's finished the last book of the series. What? That's insane. Writers who refuse or die before the last book of the absolute words, absolutely. All that sort of stuff. And I can understand it because, in the realm of TV series as well, because if you have a really, really good TV series and yet they cancel it after 2 episodes or 2 seasons, something like that, really annoying, like Firefly, for example, that can be really annoying because you're getting into something and you just know it doesn't have a future. Some people go, no, I'm not going to watch that until the thing is completed. I have some sympathy for that. I was conscious of it when I was writing Shadewood, and I ended up switching it from a 5-book series to a 4-book series because I just didn't think it warranted having 5 books. But I got criticised for that as well. People told me book 3 was a bit rushed, so I was like, hey, what can I do? Sometimes it backfires on you a bit as well. But it's a good point. But I do think a back catalogue helps. A back catalogue helps a bit, but I wouldn't say it was essential. I think it might make things a bit easier. So those sort of things. Now the other thing, before we switch off social media, is social media paid advertising. Okay. This is the moment you put anything on Twitter or Facebook, you're almost certainly going to get your last post is getting loads of traction. Give us 50 quid and we'll boost it so it finds even more. Now, I've had a look at this myself, and I've dabbled with like 10 quid here and 5 quid there on these sort of things to sort of see what the impact is. And out of the two, Facebook is way superior from what I can work out than Twitter in terms of actual targeted advertising. And what you can do with Facebook is you can basically have a sponsored post, and you've probably seen these for other products, right? And you can select a demographic to have it targeted at. So you can select a geography, you can select sci-fi fantasy fans, you can select age groups, you can select genders, and all these sorts of things. Basically your advert will then be targeted at people who say on Facebook that they're in those categories, right? Assuming they're telling the truth. Now, what you get in response is an infographic thing, basically telling you how many times your advert was placed, how many people looked at it, how many people clicked on it, and then how many people went through that link to wherever the destination was that you set it, which could be your Amazon page for your book, or it could be your website or wherever it happens to be. Now, depending on what you set up. Now, what I did is I tried a Facebook ad for signing up to my newsletter. I thought I'll give that a whirl. Let's see how many people I can entice on Facebook to click on my advert and then go through to my newsletter, and I'll see how many people sign up to my newsletter as a response to the Facebook ad, comparing with what would normally happen in an average month. So I think what I did, I think it gave me I can't remember what it was now. I think it gave me $25 or £25 of free credit if I matched that. So I think I spent £25 to match it. So it gave me 50 quid I'd spend on advertising. And so I effectively spent 50 quid on a Facebook advert. And I think Twitter had a similar offer, but it was slightly less, like £30 or something. So I tried both about a year ago to see what would happen. Now, and the results were quite interesting, actually. So the Twitter one did whatever it did in like about a 6-hour window. Okay, it was really quite fast. I basically pressed the submit button, submitted my stuff. It got approved because it has to go through an approval process. And then Twitter did whatever it did. I never saw the advert actually appear, which maybe is the way it's supposed to work. And it was like over in like 6 hours. And Twitter went, "Yay! Congratulations! You've submitted your Twitter ad. We've blatted it across Twitter." So I thought, well, okay. So with my website, I've got the ability to look at the stats on it and find out how many people have clicked on which pages. And the total number of people who'd clicked on my page as a result of the Twitter ad and 30 quid's worth of Twitter advertising was 0. Okay, so that led me to a fairly obvious conclusion. Now the Facebook one was different. The Facebook one was basically had like a time slider. How fast do you want your advert to go out? You could concentrate it and blat it out in just a few hours, or you could spread it out over a week or several days. So I said, right, let's put it out over a week and see what happens. And I think about the Facebook stats said that something like 8,000 people, I think it was, had seen my Facebook ad. At least it had been presented to them on the screen. Now, whether that meant they just scrolled past it. And I targeted it at, I think, 18 to 60-year-olds, both genders, worldwide, science fiction and fantasy, something like that. Okay. Basically, I've got about 8,000. Facebook told me there had been 8,000 presentations of my thing on these people. That's how many people had seen it. When I looked on my website, I'd actually had something like 100 clicks registered on my website. All right. So 100 people out of the 8,000 people who had seen the ad actually clicked on it and went to my website, which was the newsletter page, and I could see that on my Google stats on my website. How many people had signed up to my newsletter as a result of all that? 0. So my first foray into social media advertising cost me £80, which wasn't a great amount, but was entirely not effective whatsoever. Now, what's what I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about is how much money, is it just literally chucking money into a black hole, online social media advertising, or is it one of those things that you need to have put significant amount of money in before you get any traction, and so therefore you need to advertise over quite a long period of time, spending quite a lot of money before it actually starts to produce any worthwhile results? I don't know, and I've done a bit of research on the internet, and it's trying to find out what other people have tried, and some people you're better off singing on TikTok, buy my book, yeah. So and basically the answer is a very definitive I don't know. It's possible that if you spend a certain amount of cash on a regular basis, and some people do advocate spending £100 a month just constantly sending out the same adverts, and figuring out what your very, very specific demographics are, as a result, I haven't tried that. I could try that, but the idea of spending so much money on that sort of stuff irks me a bit, and I don't really want to spend that sort of money without going, is this actually a genuinely worthwhile thing to do? Now, you obviously do see a lot of sponsored tweets on Twitter and sponsored ads on Facebook, so people are doing it, but I don't see that many people doing it with books. So there's that. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying approach it with an awful lot of caution, because you could you could spend an awful lot of money and see no results at all. I think. So I can dredge up my figures from a couple of weeks ago if you like. So I mean, yeah, I'd be interested in Joan on here if you've got some other stats on that. And that's my experience of it. So I've not really done any advertising in that sort of fashion at all. I've always sort of relied, I suppose, on a bit of word of mouth kind of talking about my books. So it is there. Does it work? I don't know really. Even if you don't make back the cost of advertising, you can pay for some of the marketing you eventually get making. Yes, that's the thing. Now, Tuplex is another one. Merchandising. Okay, merchandising. Now, if you've got something recognised, but now, so I spoke to. I've got quite a few friends who are into music. Okay, they either run bands or that sort of stuff, and they said to me, he said we make no money off our music at all. We make no money off our music at all. It's all merchandising. And you're kind of like, okay. So selling a T-shirt with my band makes more money than the band makes making its music. I mean, it's a crazy world, right? So there's the thing. Merchandise. Now, what can you merchandise with a book? Because the book is already a piece of merchandise, arguably. Now, I suppose you can do T-shirts, you could do hats, you could do key rings, you can do all that sort of stuff. I've dabbled with that a little bit and not seen a great deal of traction with it. I've had some success with it, but not very, very much. And I haven't really, again, tried very hard. But again, it's another big use of time that, again, takes you away from writing. Okay, if effectively turning it into a sort of mini business, you've got to be aware, about what you're doing. Win to Meet GB, you need to ensure you're showing the right ad to the right people, the right territory, and the right platform, ensuring you know how many impressions are buying per hour. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of complexity in there, which if you're going to go down that route, obviously go and do your research on. It's a big, thorny, complicated thing, though. And ideally, you'd want an expert to tell you what to do. And the problem is those experts. There's an awful lot of snake oil experts out there, and genuinely, how many of them? Any good expert worth their salt is going to be probably quite expensive to hire. So then you're back to that problems. So anyway, here's some more stats. So JL 1988, £160 on Facebook ads across the US and UK over 10 days. Set to charge on link click results in 1,153 link clicks and 50 ebook sales, several downloads on Kindle Unlimited and some paperback sales. The royalties from Kindle are slowly dribbling in, but I've got back £65. Okay, so it's, like I said at the beginning of the stream, spending more money than you gain on sales is not the best business strategy. Now you've got to try. Now the thing is, with marketing, you may have to spend money up front in the hope that you're going to recoup it in future sales. That's tricky. Is it a lost leader to start with, and you have to kind of build up with it? I don't know, but I'm interested to find out what other people think. Nimnotsky says your characters and settings could be classified as assets that could be merchandised. So is that a word? So yes, what would I do with the characters? Do you put them on a T-shirt? Do you put them on the mug? Is it a quotable thing? I haven't done much in that kind of. I've played around with it, but the problem with that is I think you need to have a certain level of recognition. Now, for example, a Harry Potter thing, okay, like a Harry Potter wand or a Dumbledore's cloak or something like that, is so much brand recognition that merchandising seems like an obvious thing, right? If you're an individual with a hardly spotted, unrecognizable brand, or a book with a series of characters, I'm not sure. It's just the leverage isn't there to make anybody actually want anything like that. I don't know. I certainly haven't had people beating down my door saying, "Why isn't there a Shadewood T-shirt?" For example. Or even a Drew Wager T-shirt. I've got one because I made it myself. So you know, and it's the recognition. How much recognition do you need before that becomes Drew Wager hats? Maybe you can buy one of these from Canterbury High Street. That's where I got mine from. Drew Wager hats, action figures. I don't think an action figure with me will be all that exciting. Be an in-action figure, so how big does that need to be? And I think if in some ways I think if you're a band playing some music and you go to a gig and then you got some T-shirts for people who enjoyed your gig, that kind of does make sense to me. I'm not sure if you've bought a book on Amazon that you necessarily go, right, I really need a T-shirt of that book, because it doesn't feel like it's the same. So I'm not sure merchandising around books. I mean, how many of you got a T-shirt? Straw poll. How many of you got a T-shirt? How many of you got an Isaac Asimov T-shirt or an Arthur C. Clarke T-shirt or I don't know anything a lot? How many of you got a piece of merchandising associated with an author? Right? How many of you got a piece of merchandising associated with an author that you can lay your hands on? Question. I don't know. Maybe some of you have. Now, if your book makes it into a successful film, I think that's slightly different. Okay, so Game of Thrones. Okay, so Wintermute has got a Terry Pratchett T-shirts and Glenn's got a few Dune T-shirts. Okay, but they're big names, right? My grandma, my mum would have heard of Terry Pratchett. So that sort of thing, right? So how big does it need to be worth it? Now you can set up, and I have done this, and I need to reinstate it as JR1988 has talked about. I have set up a merchandising store for my sort of stuff because it's relatively low cost for me to do, because you can do print on demand, all the sort of cool things nowadays. Okay, but it's still something that you have to do and manage. A Terry Pratchett tour. Now, if you're going on a tour, I think that's a possibility. Okay, so if you're basically saying I'm going on a book tour and I'm going to be in these locations. Apologies for the space dog, by the way, it's barking out the back. In the depths of the universe there. I think that kind of makes sense. If you're going to be physically present in a location, then it's probably worth having some merchandising along with you. But do bear in mind that merchandise is very, very heavy to cart around, okay? That's another thing, the practicalities of this sort of stuff. Now, for example, I've just been to LaveCon, right? How was that, last month? It must have been about a month ago now, possibly a bit more. Can't remember, because time flies like an arrow and fruit flies like a banana. But I went to LaveCon. Okay, now I didn't take any merchandise to LaveCon other than the books, right? Okay, so I took a few copies of The Four Shadewoods. I took a few copies of Lords of Midnight and Doom Dark's Revenge. I took a few copies of Elite Reclamation. I took the last remaining copies of Elite. What's the other one? Elite Premonition. I forgot what it was called. So not very many. Probably 10 books of each one. Okay, with me, and the entirety of my Passat estate. Okay, so a Passat estate is an average estate family car full of stuff, right? Because I took the banners along as well, because it's like, here I am, my books, and a few other bits and pieces that I need, like the PayPal terminal that takes credit cards and various other bits and pieces like that. Okay, not a great deal of stuff, you might think, but it took me and my son, because you've got to lug it from the car to where it is that they're giving you a table. You've got to lug all that stuff in and set it up. Now, books are heavy. Okay, and so fortunately I brought my 18-year-old son along with me to kind of give me a hand, but it took us several, it's basically a few hours to get set up and also a few hours to break down again. It's quite a lot of work. So if you're physically carting around any merchandise is a physical job, all right? So etc. Okay, so bear that in mind. There are practical considerations here as well if you're going on a tour. Terry's a good example because there's much, and Terry's got the advantage that he's no longer with us, so he's even more famous. Okay, no, I'm not planning that as a strategy, by the way. How about Salome Lives Black Armband? Ooh, too soon. Yeah. Actually, that's more than 5 years ago, so maybe we should do that. think Frontier might have a word to say about that sort of thing. And millions of Frodo Lives t-shirts. Yeah, so but I think if you have a massive hit on your hands, then merchandising makes sense, and maybe you can plan to be ready for that if it does take off. But I don't really think merchandising is a way to be successful in the first place. Merchandising is one of those things to me that seems to be a trailing thing, that you basically go, oh, this has been a hit, right, quick merch, because people will buy that as well and you can make more money out of the thing that you're already making money out of. That's my opinion. That might not be right, but feel free to disagree with me on chat. That's my impression, that merchandising follows success rather than leads it, if that makes sense. That's the sort of thing. Now, on that note, book tours. Okay, now your indie publisher or your traditional publisher may suggest a book tour. Okay, and a book tour could be going to some sci-fi conventions. A book tour could include some visits to bookshops. It could include those sort of things. Okay, speeches at some event or something like that. Now, those again are a huge amount of work to organise, and you're going to spend most of your time organising it yourself. Okay, so depending on how much marketing budget is. Now, my experience of this is that it's fairly easy to get yourself on a panel at a convention. Okay, so you can basically talk, usually alongside a bunch of other authors, about some topic that the convention is interested in. That may or may not be connected to your novel or not. What you certainly shouldn't do if you're invited to a panel on at a convention is to basically say, oh, by the way, I've got a book. Okay, that's not what you're there for. You're there to talk about things. Now, hopefully, if you make a good impression on said panel, and they'll all know that you are, because the person who introduces the panel will probably say something along the line, Drew Wager, author of the is here to, he's been writing for 20 years, he has a Twitch channel, and he's here to join our panel. Thank you very much, Drew, for coming on. It'll be something like that. So people should know you're an author and roughly a little bit about you and what genre you specialise in before the panel kind of kicks off, right? But what you mustn't do is you mustn't plug your books is part of that. So being at conventions is quite good, but it's not necessarily a direct place that you would sell an awful lot of your books. It's a good place to get yourself recognised and go, oh, yeah, Drew, I remember seeing him at the XYZ convention, and then you see the same people at the next convention, and if you can build up a bit of momentum, that will help you. Now, I was trying to do that just before COVID. So I had this big plan in 2019 to visit a whole stack load of conventions and try and hobnob and meet people. And as a result of COVID, that plan was kind of shelved. And I haven't really got back into it. So I do need to have a think about that, because that was part of my kind of strategy that I was planning to do, to sort of see which conventions actually helped. Because you don't know that in advance. Again, cost, time, effort, travelling, distance, cost, etc., etc. So bear that one in mind as well. Drew, you haven't mentioned sending out review copies. Okay, so review copies. Now, here's the thing that you can do. We can basically send copies of your book to people on the internet for free and say, could you read my book? And if you like it, could you give me a review? Or even if you don't like it, could you give me a review? And now, there's a couple of things there. Most of the reviews I've seen of books where they've been given a free review copy, the reviews are a bit saccharine, a bit too sweet, a bit too complimentary, and the honest ones basically put a little bit of text. I was given this book free in exchange for review, which is which is quite good. It's not a bad thing to do. I think it can work for you, because if you can get a review by somebody who is well respected in giving reviews and it comes out positive, then that will help. There are blog sites and review sites which are respected, and there are blog reviewers that do a good job of reviewing books. The danger there is they may not like your book. They may tell everybody that. So it's not a guaranteed thing. So I think you've got two dangers there. You've got one, the person on the other end may not like your book, and you've also got quite a few of them who only do it to get free books and will write up a review that's nice anyway, which may not be what you're after. So tread carefully there. I don't think it's a bad thing. I personally have never done it. I've never sent out any free copies of my books to anybody in exchange for a review. I don't really know, but some of the reviews I've read online are very self-serving and a bit too nice, a bit too sweet. But some of them are honest and basically say, I got this book for free in exchange for writing this review, which is fair enough, I suppose. Some of them are fair and balanced. There's no doubt about it. So I think if you've got somebody who you respect and you've looked at their previous reviews of other things and you think that's a worthwhile shot, then definitely go for it. It's not something I must admit I've tried. So there's the thing. Jan here says, aside from LaveCon, what other conventions are that are good for sci-fi authors? Okay, well, LaveCon isn't really all that good for sci-fi authors, actually. I'm the only one who ever goes. LaveCon is an Elite Dangerous convention. It's not an writers convention at all. Actually, no, that's not true. I suppose Alan, technically, he was. I think apparently he stepped down from doing LaveCon this year. But he was also an author of an Elite Dangerous novel, so that's not quite entirely fair that I'm the only one. But he doesn't. I don't think I saw any of his books for sale when I've been at LaveCon. So maybe I've missed them. But I'm the only person. Let's say I'm the only author who turns up with a table full of books that you can buy fairly obviously at LaveCon. LaveCon is not an authors convention. Okay, it's an Elite Dangerous convention with a bit of retro gaming goodness thrown in. Okay, so LaveCon isn't really a very big convention. It's got maybe 70, 80, 90, 100, 120 people in total. So as conventions go, that's not very large. Okay, it's Elite Dangerous. That's what LaveCon is. So it's probably the only. I think it's the only Elite Dangerous themed convention that's left. Fantasticon was sort of a bit Elite Dangerous, even that's sort of not happening this year, and it drifted away from Elite really in terms of general focus to be more bookish. But so I think LaveCon is basically the Elite Dangerous convention. And that's only in the UK as far as I'm aware. So no, it's not really the ideal thing for generic sci-fi authors. The only reason I went is because I've been going for years and I wanted to go one more time, and there are people there who like Elite Dangerous, and I've got some Elite Dangerous books clearly, so that kind of made sense. And I know a lot of people there, and it's fun to talk to them. So that's good, but not for general sci-fi stuff. You wouldn't find an audience for it there. In terms of others, now there are quite a lot of conventions around. In terms of whether they're worth going to as a sci-fi author, well, it depends a lot on what you're thinking you're going to get out of the convention. Now, I've tried different things. I've tried having tables at conventions. Now, my experience is it's worth having a table at a Comic-Con type convention where people are expecting to buy stuff. Okay, so most Comic-Cons have got prints of Marvel characters or Disney characters or keyrings of this, that, and the other, and there usually are a few other author or writery types around who are selling books direct at those sort of things. So Comic-Cons, I would recommend potentially having a table out there if you can figure out if there are some other authors about. Now, having other authors about is both a good and bad thing, right? Because on one hand, there's other people to talk to who are doing the same sort of thing as you are, and you can kind of crib notes from them. On the flip side, you're competing with them for sales, okay? Because there's only so many punters with so much money. So bear that in mind. But I would say Comic-Con is Comic-Cons with a table directly selling books is quite good. So Alan Strand is the head. He's the current chair, I think, of the British Science Fiction Society, BSF. I can't remember what the BSFA is. I don't pay a lot of attention to all these little organisations, to be honest. But so there will be a list, and there's plenty of lists of conventions that you can look up. So all those sort of things. So Comic Cons are quite good for that sort of thing. Generally, science fiction conventions are funny though. Okay. Science fiction conventions I find quite so. Now I've tried a table at a couple of generic science fiction stroke fantasy conventions, and I didn't find I had much traction at all. Sitting at a table trying to flog some books. What I found was most people who go to those sort of conventions are fans of specific shows or TV series or books. Okay, so you'd have Star Trek fans, you'll have Doctor Who fans, you'll have Star Wars fans, you'll have things like that, and those things are a big deal. Okay, those things are a big deal, and they will be spending their money on memorabilia or anything with a Star Trek logo on it or a Star Wars. They'll buy a lightsaber or they'll buy a model spaceship and all those sort of things. Okay. They're not really coming to those conventions to find new science fiction authors or new genres, because they're already big fans of the genre, the particular franchise that they're already a fan of. Okay, so they're coming there to hobnob and chat with other insert current fantasy or science fiction topic, franchise, and enjoy talking to other people about their chosen franchise. And those conventions generally have some big name speakers. Like I went to one, for example, where Marina Sirtis from Star Trek Next Generation was giving a talk, and she was great. Okay, she was really, really funny, and I sat in that talk and I really, really enjoyed it, and I had a good time. Hardly sold any books at all, but barely covered my costs, I think, in terms of getting there, buying, having to pay for a table and getting back out again. Those sort of conventions not really good for direct sales, if that makes sense, unless you're a name that everybody's already heard of. So again, once you're successful, it's easy. I did sit next to another lady who was also selling books, so they kind of put the all three people together, which again, good and bad thing. At least you've got somebody to speak to. She was saying the same sort of thing, is that it's very, very hard if nobody's heard of your stuff for people to take a punt on you as an unknown, because most people, if you say Drew Wager to the vast majority of the internet, nobody will have heard of me, right? And it's the same for all the other authors. I've got a bit of notoriety under Elite Dangerous, but even that's fading now. Interesting enough, it was at LaveConf. It's been 5 years since my last Elite Dangerous book, and the whole Salome thing was like 5 years ago. Okay, there's an awful lot of Elite Dangerous players who A, never heard of it in the first place, and B, certainly haven't heard of it now. Okay, so it's only a very small pool of people, even inside the Elite Dangerous community, who have heard of me. That's just the way it is. Okay, so I'm not a big name. And it's in the wider realm of science fiction and fantasy, I'm a nobody, right? You don't have that kind of brand recognition. You can't go, by the way, it's Drew Wager, I'm here, thank you very much. Just sign up, just form an orderly queue. Don't have that sort of brand recognition. Now, if you were, for other things, if you've got bigger name, if you've won some awards, okay, and your book has been picked up by this, that, and the other, then that's slightly different. You can put your book in to be considered for awards and all those sort of things. And again, once you start having some traction and success, it's easy to get some more traction and success, and you might be invited to panels, and then more and more people will hear about you. But it's breaking into those things in the first instance is where the fun is. I can ask a few people that have heard of me. Didn't that guy get murdered? Yeah. So all of those sorts of things, and you might get a lift up from another author who basically likes your stuff. There's a thing as well. Some people try getting published in the same anthologies of other famous authors and get some brand recognition that way. All of those things are viable, but they're certainly not guaranteed. Now, so conventions to me are a little bit hit and miss. I think if you go into the expectation that you might make some good contacts and you might have some interesting conversations and pick up ideas from other people, I think that's good. I wouldn't necessarily go into a convention thinking, yeah, it's brilliant. This is where all the sci-fi people hang out. I'm going to sell thousands of books, because that's just not what happens. Interesting enough, the biggest observation I had actually at the last major convention I went to, which was somewhere down in, I can't remember what it was now, somewhere down by the coast, was the and this sounds horribly sexist, but it isn't supposed to be horribly sexist. Was female reaction to my second book, being purple. Okay. I don't know, even to this day I've got no idea why this is, but I can guarantee every time if a woman walked past my stand and stopped and actually vaguely had a conversation about the books, they'd always pick up book number 2 every single time. And it has, as I don't know if most of you know the Shapewood Saga, but the book 2 is this purple, quite striking purple colour every single time. Now I reckon it's something to do with chocolate, because in the UK Cadbury's chocolate has a purple wrapper, so I think it's something to do with that. So that might be a marketing tactic for you. Okay, make all your books purple. But I was just observing this, and actually the lady on the stand next to me observed. She noticed it as well, and did comment about it at lunch. So it said, what have you got with the women all picking up your book? And I said, I think it's something to do with the colour. She picked it up and said, yeah, I really like that colour. I don't know anything about your stories, but I would definitely pick that one up. So there's some... you don't judge a book by its cover, clearly, but obviously some people do. So I don't know whether there's anything in that or not, but there are no secrets here to be revealed. Okay, it is luck and trying things out to find out what sticks and what doesn't work. So yeah, the purple book thing is a bit weird, but it was definitely a thing. First time chat from Mr. Zia. Wow, I'm actually up when you're streaming. Hello, good to see you, Mr. Zia. Thank you very much for popping in. So maybe my next book cover should be, but so that's just one of those things that I think. Now, what I did find is that the conversations where I did actually manage to, I did manage to have a conversation with people. It is worth having your 30-second what is your book about rehearsed. Okay, that's definitely recommended. So if you can get a little bit of a spiel, and it sounds a horribly salesy thing to say, but a little bit of a spiel that basically explains fairly quickly what your book is about, that's worth having ready to go. Okay, this is a book set on an exoplanet, and it's young people, kind of coming of age story, a bit of a romance, science fiction setting, but kind of a fantasy feel. There you go. It's a series of 4 books. They're all available here, and you get a discount if you buy all 4. So you need to have a little bit of sales patter, I'm afraid, in order to entice people into buying your book. So it is this is the problem. As a writer, your marketing budget is small. The number of people you're trying to get to is hard to find, and you need to have multiple skills. Not only do you need to be able to write a book, you've got to be able to market it, you've got to be able to sell it, and you've got to have the confidence to do all these things. Now that's quite a big ask. It's quite intimidating, actually, sitting behind a desk with all your books and all your stuff as people are walking past, to try and catch people's eyes and have a conversation which ultimately leads to them buying your book. Okay, that's quite intimidating. And I'm saying that as a person who is 50 plus, has been in quite a lot of high pressure sales positions as part of his career, is used to speaking to people, is confident speaking in public, and doesn't mind a bit of rejection. All right. Now if you're at all sensitive to any of those things, this is going to be extremely, excruciatingly painful to do. All right. And so it's a skill, and you've got to have a certain degree of, it's like the sort of conversation you might have had with your dad when there was the pretty girl in class and you wanted to ask her out, and you think, oh, if she says no, I'm going to die. It's that sort of thing. He says, yeah, but Dad says, and your dad tells you, of course, but if you don't ask her, you'll never know, right? It's that sort of fear. Well, what if she says no? Will you just try the next one? You've got to get over that sort of fear of basically someone saying, no, I'm not going to buy your book, because most of them won't. Okay, most of them won't do. You'll spend maybe 5 minutes having a chat with somebody, and then they'll go, "Well, that's very nice, thank you very much," and then they'll just go. All right, that is just inevitable. You spend most of your time to be honest, you spend 80% of your time at a convention, if you've got a book stand, talking to whoever's next to you, basically saying, "How's it going for you?" And they'll be saying, "Oh yeah, great," and it's very, very dull and boring. You'll spend 15% of your time talking to people which won't lead to a book sale, and you'll spend maybe 5% of your time talking to people which will actually potentially lead to a book sale. Okay, it's just, that's just the way it is. George McFly's line in Back to the Future, "I don't think I could take that kind of rejection." So yeah, so that's an inevitability. Okay, and if you I'm afraid if you want to do that in front of other people, you have to put yourself into that space and sell. And it doesn't come naturally. I don't find it particularly comfortable, it's not something I like. It feels a bit forced, but having watched other people do it and seen where they failed, where they've succeeded, there's no alternative. You have to be a bit salesy, and that can be quite hard. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a skill like any other skill, and it isn't one that necessarily comes naturally to a writer, because you're probably going, "No, I've written my book, I've done all the stuff, somebody else can do that." And if you've got somebody else do that for you, that'd be fantastic, but most of the time you haven't. So you've got to work on yourself a bit in order to put yourself in that space, because you're not going to have many other resources to do it for you. So there's that side of things. So actually, if you do get an opportunity to be in front of something, be ready for it. So if you're in a position where you can go on a panel, or you can give a lecture, or you can give a talk, or you can do a telephone interview or a radio interview or anything like that, work on your delivery and your presentation so that you come across as an interesting person. People will listen to what you have to say. So things like that are an important part of your toolkit, if you like, in terms of things. Here's a classic sales kind of thing that is not always true, but it quite often is true. People tend to buy things from people they like. Okay, so if you're a bit of an obnoxious toe rag, then they probably won't want to buy your stuff. Whereas if you're personable, and you show some interest in them, and you explain what your book is about in an interesting way, and it resonates with them, then you can get. And I've had several sales of my books basically because somebody said, "Okay, so what's your book about then, Drew?" I've basically said, well, it's quite difficult to explain, and it's this and it's that, and if you waffle too much, you can bore people, right? So I've learned to be succinct. You may not have figured this out, but no, toe rag, yeah, not toe rank, toe rag. Toe rag is a British phrase, I suppose. So I've found it better if I can appeal to sort of things. It's like. Imagine. Do you know Anne McCaffrey, for example? Oh yeah, I like Anne McCaffrey. Well, it's kind of that sort of style. She was one of my big inspirations. I think if you can link your stuff back sometimes to things that other people might have heard of, I say it's very much. It's got some of the romanticism and the adventure of Star Wars, but it's much more realistic in in the way it portrays technology, for example. Okay, that kind of makes sense to me. That sort of thing. Lords of Midnight is very Tolkien-esque. Okay, so if you know your Tolkien, this is going to be exactly up your street. It's that sort. So linking what you do to stuff that other people might have recognised, I think it has worked quite well for me. So that is a tip that does kind of work. There are things like that, but basically it's plugging away at it. And the more you do conventions, and the more you do social media, and the more you do all the other bits and pieces, and I think you've got to it's like having multiple plates spinning. You've got to keep a whole bunch of them spinning kind of simultaneously and put yourself into it. The more you do it, the more traction you're going to get. But it's a slow burn. Okay, it's a slow burn. It's going to take a while to get going. Softly Don't Go. I like the prologue in Lords of Midnight. So getting you into the story and that kind of thing. The one thing you're going to have to put up with, and I've mentioned this on the stream as well. I'm going to get a book to demonstrate this. Let's have Lords of Midnight, because why not? We just mentioned it. Okay. Now you've got your book. Okay, you've got your book, and it's on display on your stand, and it's all looking good. Okay. What you're going to get is is certain types. I don't know what's going on here, but this is really common. At least it is in the UK. Maybe you can tell me if it's the same elsewhere. Is people will pick up your book, right, and they'll look at the front cover and go, "Oh, yeah, that's very nice." And they'll look on the back, and yeah, they might read the black word, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with. Okay, you could just, the old cliche, you don't buy a book by its cover is rubbish. Okay, you do, right? If your cover is rubbish, then people won't buy your book. Okay, so your cover has got to be good. It's a gateway device. Okay, people aren't necessarily going to buy your book because of the cover, but they will not look at your book if the cover's bad, if that makes sense. So you do need to have a decent cover. They will look at the cover. The person who picks up the book looks at the cover, and then turns it over and looks at the back, and maybe they read the back blurb. So the back blurb is quite important too. What's the book actually about? What kind of book is it? But then they move. Okay, then they move into the weirdness. Okay, yeah, and I've seen this at conventions a lot. They'll pick your book up like this, and they'll usually thumb through it like this. And I'm like, what are you looking for? It's a book. There's going to be some words in it. And then sometimes they'll flick it backwards. They'll flick backwards through it. Just like, I'm thinking to myself, are you checking that there are actually words on all the pages and I haven't just cheated and put a few words on the first few pages and the rest of it's blank? So what are you looking for? And this lady who was sitting next to me I mentioned this to her, and I said, look, watch the next person who picks up one of the books. They're going to thumb through it, right? And I said, what do you think they're looking for? And anyway, so this person turned up, did exactly that, did this, looked all the way through it like that, virtually every single page, and then did it back the other way again like this, right? And then went, no, it's not for me. Put it down. I said, what, did you speed read the entire book forwards and backwards and then decide you didn't like it? What are you doing? Is there a golden ticket inside? Is there an Amazon voucher buried within the document? What are they looking for? No pictures, exactly. So there are words. Yeah, there are words. I don't know what it is. I mean, sometimes they will. I mean, sometimes they will genuinely stop at a point and read it. They've chosen a random location in the book and they start reading. And I don't know if the idea is that, if a random paragraph in your book gets their interest, then they'll buy it. So the problem is you never know where we're going to stop. So it's like, okay, so let's say they start reading from the middle of chapter 3 or something. It's like a strange way to do that. Duplex, I do that myself with books. It's like searching for a hook to get in. So are you looking, what are you looking for? You're looking for a random part. I mean, but where's the logic in saying, if chapter 4, halfway through chapter 4, a random paragraph in chapter 4 is good, then the rest of the book's quality? It doesn't make a lot of sense. In all seriousness, they could be checking to see how easy it is to read. Is the typeface, font, and layout easy? That is a fair point, I suppose. Has it been published nicely? I suppose that is fair, but it's unusual, I think, that you'd find that many people with badly styled books. I mean, maybe it does happen. Imagine them stopping at a random point and finding one typo. It's just really, really bad luck. Does the book make the right sound when you rifle through the pages? Yeah, I don't know. It's about the tone of the writing. So does it? I suppose that's true. I mean, I think that's fair. There, style, look and feel. It's just, does it say Lorem Ipsum all the way through the book? Yeah. Is the writing something you can kind of get along with? If you're reading a paragraph and you're still going, and it's not heavy and it's not obtuse, then I suppose that makes sense. But I do find it slightly amusing that people will do that. So that's a thing. That's the thing that people do. It's just one of those things, right? So bear that in mind as well. I find it quite amusing. and so did the lady next door to me. So people do that to my books as well. It's really weird. So and I must admit, I suppose I've not been on the other side of the fence, as it were. I don't usually go to conventions to buy other books because I tend to get mine through recommendations on Amazon. So yeah, so it's one of those things. Araki says, Harkonnen always laughs at me for I read the last page of a new book before I get it. What? You mustn't do that. That's sacrilege. You mustn't do that. No. But yeah. Now the other thing, again, and this is a topic for another stream because we've talked about books, and of course, what the other thing to bear in mind is that I've hiked and done a lot of, and people at conventions like to buy physical things. Okay, people at conventions do like to buy physical thing. So you'll sell paperback books at conventions and shows and things like that. Okay, most of your sales, however, won't come from paperback books. At least not anymore. 10 years ago, they might have done. Now, ebooks are generally, certainly in my experience, more popular, and also audiobooks now are increasing in popularity hugely. Okay, so there's those things to consider as well, which we'll move on to in a future stream. So your marketing strategy, which is, and I do like the word strategy because it sounds posh and it sounds like you're concocting some incredible sophisticated thing. A strategy is nothing more than a plan. Okay, strategy and plan are kind of the same word. Strategy just sounds cooler. Okay, I always explain this when I'm at work. And they say, what's our strategy? I say, well, have we got a plan? Yeah, we've got a plan. Well, there's the strategy then. It's absolutely fine. Okay, strategy just sounds cooler. So you can have a QR code. Those are things that people like to scan. You can have a QR code for your newsletter and things like that. So there are little gimmicks and things like that you can try. You can have a QR code that takes you to your Audible version if that's what you want. Obviously, make sure it all works properly before you print the QR code out and do it. But those are things that you can have on your stand if you say, okay, well, the ebook's basically there. You scan that and you can go get it now. That's definitely a thing that's worth trying. The other thing for conventions, absolutely top tip is do take a card reader. Okay, hardly anybody carries enough cash to buy lots and lots of stuff nowadays. And having a tap to go card reader. I've got a PayPal one. It doesn't have to be a PayPal one. There's lots of other versions. I don't know where I put it. Actually, it's probably over there somewhere. So having a card reader where people can go, oh yeah, I'll have a copy of that, and you can just tap it in, go. Way easier than managing cash, and in some conventions it actually won't allow you to handle cash anymore anyway because of obviously things like COVID. Having a card reader, now that requires you to, if you've got a card reader, you're going to have a bank account and you're going to have to have connected it all up. So there's lots of stuff again there you've got to test in advance. Does the place where you have power, or do you need to bring a battery backup for your thing? All those bits and pieces. Okay, so conventions are lots of fun, but they can be extremely hard work. So if you're going to a convention for a weekend, might be worth taking a day off afterwards to recover from the experience of doing it, because it's hard work. Okay, there's lots of lugging books around and all that sort of stuff as well. So physically hard work and mentally quite hard work. I find conventions quite draining, and you're having to, if you're selling and you're standing up and talking about yourself in any capacity during the convention, you're pushing out a lot of energy. Okay, so as an introvert it's quite draining. So an extrovert, you might love it, but as an introvert you'll come away from a convention totally shattered. Okay, totally shattered. So bear that in mind as well. So we've gone through social media. Conventions are a good thing. Book signings now. Book signing, right? I've done a few of these, and book signings can be great. Okay, book signings can be great if it intersects with a bunch of people who actually genuinely want to have a copy of your book. Book signings can also be utterly soul destroying as well. Okay, now I've not been on the bad end of one because I haven't done many of them, but I did have a writer friend who organised, and it actually was traditionally published, so she was doing way better than me, and had her first novel traditionally published, I think through Penguin. Actually, I'm just trying to remember what the book was called. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to go look it up. And they had organised for a book signing at Waterstones, and and I went along to sort of support and buy a copy of a book. And it was up in Canterbury, which isn't my local Waterstones, but it's not all that far away. Penguin book, new author, lady author. I think it was a young adult book from what I recall. So etc., etc., etc. And I went along, and I was I wasn't there for the opening bit. I kind of ended up 20 minutes sort of later, thinking that I'd joined a queue of people to sign this book. Got to the bookshop, no queue. And horrible as this is, it was a flop. Hardly anybody turned up, and sometimes apparently that just happens. Audiences for these things are extremely fickle, and sometimes even a big name publisher just can't get people to go. For a I spoke to her afterwards, and she said it was just dreadful because she sat there for 2 hours not doing anything, not a nice way to. It's not an edifying thing. So it is. Things like that are fraught with difficulty. Sometimes it can be, amazing, and you can have a queue of people out the building, and other times it's just tumbleweed, and you can't really guarantee either happening. So all of these things, and if you're organising them yourselves at your own cost, of course, then that's even worse. So building up to these things, I think, over time is certainly something that you need to think about. But even with a big name publisher, it's not guaranteed that it's going to work. And Jen, I think, says, remember that book signing author talk I was supposed to be involved with back in November? That got cancelled on me the week before. Still can't get them to talk to me to rearrange. So, I mean, things like COVID obviously put a massive wrench into all those kind of things anyway. Whilst this writing stream isn't really an advert for me as a writer, because I think the vast majority of you who are on this stream have probably heard of me, and if you were interested in my books, you would have bought them long ago. So I know some of you have, and thank you very much. But it's not primarily a kind of author promotional tool. It's just I'm trying to, I've been writing for 15 years, and I'm trying to explain to people who are just wanting to get into it just pretty hard work it is, and trying to put people off. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to say, look, go in with realistic expectations about what you may or may not be able to achieve. And marketing is by far potentially the most costly, by far the most excruciatingly heart-rending part of the process, because you may have written a brilliant book, you may be the world's most talented author, you may have a fantastic cover, you may have the best blurb, you may have the best synopsis, you may have the best reviews, and nobody turns up. That may just happen, right? I wonder why it said author under your name. See, it's cutting. This is the thing. I mean, you already have to have this as a writer. You have to have a thick skin. Okay, you have to have a thick skin, because you're going to get bad reviews, and you're going to get people who don't like your book, and you're going to have times when you think, why am I bothering? Why am I doing this? Okay, because it's soul-crushingly hard work. Okay, and I put all this amazing effort of mine, lots of emotional outpourings, and I try and make it the best quality I possibly can, and I've done all this, and I've spent a year doing this, and nobody turns up. And how many other professions would that be an acceptable thing to do, right? So it's hard. It is. Don't underestimate how much, how difficult that is. Okay, you need to be mentally very resilient. Okay, you need to be mentally very resilient here. You need to be able to keep going even when it's not going your way, and that could be over a period of months or years, trying to get some traction. There are no guarantees. There are no quick wins to this. You might get lucky. I think you can improve the chances of being lucky. I don't think there are any guarantees, though. So The only piece of advice I've really got, the only top tip that there genuinely really is that the only authors who are successful are the ones who kept going. Okay, now that doesn't guarantee you'll be successful, but if you stop, you can guarantee that you won't be successful. That's the I think that's the only truism in here, is all the time you're keeping going, i.e. you're writing more books, you're trying to get the word out there, you're visiting conventions, you're doing things on social media, you're doing things on YouTube, or whatever your poison is, right? Whatever your strategy is, all the time you're keeping going, okay, you're continuing to increase your chances of being successful. If you stop and give up, it's 100% guaranteed that you won't be successful. That's about it. Okay. Look online, social media, conventions, all of these things that I've mentioned are all viable things that are potentially worth spending some time on. Okay. And only you can decide the mix of marketing techniques that you think are best for you. You've got advertising on social media. You've got advertising in traditional places. You could put up a billboard. I don't know how well that would work, or how much it would cost to have a billboard on the side of the motorway or the interstate or whatever it is in America. All those sort of things. There's lots of things you could do. Which ones can you afford? Which ones actually work? There's no science here. It's a matter of making things stick. Tuplex says, personally, I think I would not go and buy a book from an author at a signing or convention, because that would be much too personal unless the author is already a celebrity. So that's the problem. Like I said, once you become very well known, if you're a household name, there's kind of a familiarity there, isn't there? For example, if Arthur C. Clarke was still alive and wrote a new book, I would go and buy it because I know what an Arthur C. Clarke book is like. I like Arthur C. Clarke books, so it's as simple as that. It's a known quantity, and then that's sort of and I'm not saying I'm an Arthur C. Clarke by any stretch of imagination. But what I've tried to do with my books is that if you like one of my books, you'll probably like the others. Okay, I've tried to keep what I do similar. Okay, so my books are generally quite accessible. They're going to be tales of adventure and excitement and a smattering of romance. They're certainly not erotica or anything like that. They're not young adult. They're just plain old-fashioned good adventure storytelling in science fiction or fantasy realms. That's what my books are. There might be a little bit of political depth in them. They don't go too much. That's what a Drew Wager book is. Okay, so if you like a book, if you've read one of my books and you liked it, you'll probably like most of the others. Okay, the chances are fairly good because I try and keep them the same sort of thing. So if you like Shadewood, you'd probably like Elite Reclamation. If you like Elite Reclamation, you'd probably like Lords of Midnight. If you like Lords of Midnight, you'd probably like Shadewood, etc., etc., etc. So hopefully I've Drew Wager's bringing out a new book. I'll like that because I liked all this other stuff, and I'm not going to step away from my style in any of my books. Okay, so you're going to know roughly what you're going to get. Okay, you're going to get ups and downs, a bit of tragedy, and it'll probably come out okay in the end, kind of a thing, but it might be a little bit bittersweet. That's a Drew Wager book, right? So that's me. Now you might need to go and think of what your thing is, okay, and then see if you can do that as a thing. So that's sort of a marketing strategy, I suppose, in the sense it's a brand thing. What is a Drew Wager book going to be like? It's going to be like that. Can confirm, says Joe. I think Elite book, Shadewood, Lords of Midnight, all Drewish as expected. Sword fighting, yeah. There's always going to be some sword fighting. I like sword fighting. So that's what I do. That's my thing. And I suppose the twitching and the YouTubing is sort of saying, okay, well, if you want to find out a bit more about me, then you can come and listen to me waffle on about stuff. So I suppose I'm trying to make myself a bit more accessible from a kind of writing stroke authoring kind of perspective. Does that work? How many people buy books? How many people buy books as a result of me doing things on Twitch and YouTube? I can't really say. I don't know if there's a correlation. I don't think it's all that much, to be honest. I don't think people come along to my streams and go, well, he's playing Star Citizen, so therefore I'll buy his Lords of Midnight book. I don't see it. You know, and what's interesting also, for example, is I thought, and I thought I watched this very closely this year to see what happens. I thought when I stopped streaming Elite Dangerous and stopped doing any content for Elite Dangerous, I thought, you know, that'll be it. My Elite Dangerous books will have run their course. That will be it. Okay, I won't sell very many more Elite Dangerous books. You know, and it's kind of, that was the kind of thing. Oh, it's a risk. Well, you know, that was 5 years ago. It's had a good run. Let's go and do something new. Hasn't affected sales of my Elite Dangerous books at all. Okay, hasn't affected them at all. In fact, I sold more Elite Dangerous books in the last 6 months of this year than I did in the previous 6 months last year, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I specifically haven't been mentioning Elite Dangerous at all. I've done no promotion of my Elite Dangerous books at all. I haven't done any YouTube things about Elite Dangerous. I haven't done any Twitch streams of Elite Dangerous in the last year now, actually, and yet the books are still selling. Now, the books are not current. You know, they are now from lore that is 10 years old in Elite Dangerous. So I don't really have an explanation of why they're still selling, other than the fact if you type into Google Elite Dangerous novel, mine probably comes up the top of the list because of Google search results. So I suspect that is the reason why I'm still selling Elite Dangerous novels now, not to do with anything that I am, in fact, am not doing online. So the correlation between why things sell and why they don't sell is difficult to it's difficult to establish. So there we go. Wintermute says, Drew, you're still well thought of by many in the Elite Dangerous community. Oh, well, that's very kind of you, Wintermute. Thank you very much. You know, from my perspective, it's, you know, Elite Dangerous itself has, from my perspective, has run its course. I think it's a, you know, it's kind of had its time in the sun, and it's 10 years old, and you know, it's had a good run. That's okay. And I kind of look at my Elite Dangerous stuff and say, from my perspective, you know, my original Elite Dangerous book came out in 2014. That's 8 years ago now. My last Elite Dangerous book came out in 2017. That's 5 years ago. As far as I'm concerned, that's kind of ancient history now. I've finished the Shadewood saga in since that time. I've written Lords of Midnight and did Notch Revenge in that time. You know, I'm now working on my own sci-fi saga, and that's my next thing. So, you know, I did that. That was then. You know, I'm still selling copies of it, but I don't really know who I'm selling them to, if that makes sense. And I suppose they're selling because they're connected to Elite. I think that's the thing. But you know, interesting enough, I noticed, Frontier didn't tell me this, but if you look at the front, I think I'm right in saying this. Let me just double check in case it was just an error. If you go to the Frontier store, Frontier Development Store, let me just check this because I don't want to be saying things that aren't true. Does it show up on Google? That's their main page. There you are, store. You can buy you know, you can buy a T-shirt and you can buy a mug and various other bits and pieces. I think there doesn't seem to be a filter for books anymore, but in fact the store doesn't really list everything. It's a bit weird, the store. It's like it's got new products, but it doesn't. Oh, the books are there, are they? I thought they disappeared. I can only see two. I can see Out of the Darkness and Elite Legacy. Oh, there's still a page for books. Okay, so I thought maybe they'd disappeared. Oh no, they are there. Okay, so I thought they disappeared. Okay, so that doesn't show up. So no, in that case, that's where they are. But I get a breakdown. From where my books are selling from, and it's as expected. It's 99% Amazon. I get hardly any credit from the Frontier store. It's just not a big deal as far as the the sales avenue, I suppose. Yeah, it's Amazon all the way, which I suppose is only natural. But no, it's interesting actually that they are there. Because I thought they disappeared, but that's clearly not. So that's fair. But it's interesting to me that I have done no promotion of my elite stuff at all for a year, and it's still selling as many copies as it ever has. Really, it's a bit weird. Which is not huge numbers anymore, but it went up slightly this year rather than went down, which I thought was a bit weird. So I don't know. Sometimes it's just the weirdness of the internet and various other bits and pieces. So it is a bit strange. So what's the secret to marketing your book? There isn't one. Okay. What there is basically a lot of hard work and chucking various different things out to see what sticks. I think as a new person, it's really, really hard to get into it. I think you've got to be consistent at it and keep doing it. And that might be multiple channels, and that depends on how much energy you've got and how much money you've got and how much time you've got available to it. The problem is you're also trying to do marketing at the same time as you're trying to do writing, because you've got to if you bought out a book, you've got to be working on the next one, and you've got to be doing marketing for the previous one and all that sort of stuff. So how much time have you got to devote to this? Which takes away from your your actual writing time as well. So it's a difficult one to juggle. If there are other marketing things that people do that want to chuck in, then obviously either on comments on YouTube after the event or in the chat here, all good ideas are considered. But don't be under any illusions that it's not incredibly hard work. Because you don't have a huge marketing department working on your behalf at all ever. Even if you've got a traditional publisher, they don't have the resources to do it for you. There'll be a traditional publisher. If you remember from last week when we were going through the agents and the publishers in that yearbook thing, then a lot of them will be asking, tell us a little bit about you, and what they're actually interested in then is how much of a following do you already have? How much marketing have you already done about you in your books before you even come to us? Because if they've got the choice between an author who's just written a really, really good book but has no social media presence at all, or they've got somebody who's written a really, really good book but has got 5,000 followers here and 6,000 followers over there and does this online and has got a website already set up and runs and blogs and they've already got some exchange, guess who they're going to go with, right? Because it's easier to build on something than easier to build on nothing. So there's lots of things like that, and again, it's my impression of it is the more you can do, the more chance of success you have. But there's no one thing that is guaranteed to work, and I think that's the hard reality of it. And anybody trying to sell you something that's guaranteed is basically just after your cash, right? So don't fall for that one. But if you'd like to sign up to my newsletter, I shall put the link in the chat. No, you can find that on my website if you wish. It's entirely up to you. So be careful, because there's an awful lot of unscrupulous people out there wanting to take your money to give you the top 10, the top 10 secrets of marketing. There aren't any, because they don't exist. So there we are. Hats off for you for doing as well as you have in the literary world. Well, I mean, again, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. What's your definition of success? Does success for you mean having oodles of cash and being totally financial independence? Now, if that's your definition of success as a writer, that's going to be a long train waiting, a long train coming. Is that right? Very, very few people get that far. If your definition of success is I've published a book and some people have read it and liked it, that's probably going to be a bit easier to achieve. Okay. Your definition of success might be somewhere in between those two extremes. Some people say, unless I'm a traditionally published author and my series is turned into a film, I haven't made it. That's a pretty high mark to get past. Some people do it. If it's just I want to publish a book and say, now I've written a book, published it. It's not a low mark. It's still a lot of work to get to that point, but it's probably very achievable for an awful lot of people. Most people's success will be in between there somewhere. some people would say, well, I'd like it to pay. Some people say to be successful, I'd like it to, as we say in the UK, keep its nose clean, i.e. the amount of money I put into it equals or is less than the amount of money I get out of it. So I can at least point to it and say, I earned some money. That might be somebody else's definition of success. And other people might say, well, I need to be able to achieve that success over a period of 10 years, and then I feel like I'm actually being a writer. Some people will say, no, I've got to be traditionally published. Nothing else will, except to me. I need to see my book in Waterstones. I need to see my book in W.H. Smith, whatever it happens to be. Your definition of success will vary. So there we are. Fluffy Puppy 666 first time chat. Thank you very much for that. Good to see you on the stream. Can Amazon say how many sales are paperback as opposed to audio? Yes, you get a full breakdown from Amazon. Amazon tells you exactly where you've sold it, which geographical areas, what type of book you've sold, and how many in which category. Yes, they give you quite a lot of detailed breakdown. That's and I've charted those over time actually to see how the trends have changed. And I think you mentioned it just in the chat. It seems like more moving to audiobooks. Yes, very much so. When I started doing this about 15 years ago, it was all paperbacks. Okay. Then ebooks came along and peaked initially and then fell off and then have come back quite strongly. And audiobooks are just rising all the time. It seems kind of replacing paperbacks. So I do paperbacks, and I take paperbacks to places like conventions and places like that. But the vast majority of sales, if you like, of my books come from ebooks and audiobooks today. And audiobooks is an entire new section of discussion which we will go along to possibly next week. Actually, maybe audiobooks would be a good one, because that's a whole nother world of pain to get into. JR19 says, I think I consider success once I've broken even, but that's a long-term thing for sure. So start with achievable thing, get people reading, and if you've got some reviews saying people, you wrote a decent book, I think that's a really, really good place to start, because then you can build on that. Breaking even, yes, that's definitely a good thing to achieve. And then if huge financial success is an objective, then obviously strive for that as well if you wish to. But do work out your own definition of success. Mine isn't that far along. I'd like it to be not a cost to me to write, which it isn't. I make some money out of it, but you may find other things that you can turn the writing to, which is more profitable. But certainly don't go into writing as it's a way to make lots of money, because it isn't, unless you're really, 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 really lucky. All right. Bratman says audiobooks are the bane of the world. Sharp minds. I get it, but come on, people have to have time to look at. Well, the interesting thing is, and we'll do audiobooks next week, I think, as a topic. I think that'd be quite a good one to do. Yes and no, you see, because some people could be a bit sniffy about audiobooks and go, well, unless you've read the book in its original text form, you haven't really read the book. You get people like that. My counter to that is, well, the original stories. Stories are being told for thousands of years, right, around campfires and stuff, long before the printing press was invented and anybody could actually read. So the oldest form of storytelling is actually audio, right? So you could argue, I think, that audiobooks are the purest form of a book, and a textual book is actually kind of Johnny-come-lately style of book. So there is that thinking. Other people would say it was the other way around. What I've basically committed to is what I've noticed in my just pure sales data. So this is going down just to brass tacks, I think, as the Americans say, is that the sales of my audiobooks of my books, if that makes sense, are exceeding the other categories. Okay, I've sold more audiobooks of not Doomdogs, because they haven't come out yet, of my Shadewood series. I can categorically say I have sold more audiobooks of my Shadewood series than actual books of the Shadewood series in paperback form, not ebooks, but in paperback form. So my audiobook sales of Shadewood exceed paperbacks by quite some margin. And that's just a fact, all right? You can't argue that. That's a fact. That's what people have bought. Okay, and that's just the thing. Okay, that, so I've committed to trying to make sure I produce audiobooks of my stuff alongside the physical books, simply because it's something else that people will buy, right? It's just that's the truth. And audiobooks are very, and I think it's a demographic thing now, because some people are obviously, the good thing about an audiobook is you can consume it when you're commuting, when you're driving, when you're traveling, much easier than a book. And it's nice to sit down and read a book, but quite often you don't have the opportunity to do so. And people consume a lot of audiobooks when they're in a situation where they've got some time on their hands but they can't stop to read a book. I'm also surprised to see, for example, and the other thing that I'm surprised to see is, for example, my Twitch streaming and YouTube stuff. I've kind of, in my head, figured out that, I'm recording this in front of a PC, so I kind of assume that most people are watching my stuff on PC. They're not. 92, I think it is, 92% of my audience for Twitch and YouTube are watching this on their phones, which means they might be wandering around the house cooking or doing the ironing or taking the dog for a walk, and they've got me waffling in their ears for some bizarre reason. But that's just how people are consuming media today. Okay, but that has changed a lot over the last decade, so it might be a demographic shift as well. Okay. So that's the thing as well. Kelly Baglass says, for me, audiobooks have become a lot more attractive as my eyesight has deteriorated. And the secondary bonus, you can listen to an audiobook while you're doing something else at the time. Rev Hellfire says, used to read physical books while commuting, but now work from home, so it's all audiobooks these days. So changes in our society may be changing the way people consume things, and you've got to roll with that as a writer. You've got to roll with that. I don't really care if people read or listen to my books, because at the end of the day I'm telling a story, so I'm not bothered. I've got no axe to grind either way. I have a lot of fun creating audiobooks as well. They're hard work and there's a lot more effort involved than just a book, but so there we are. Commander Terraform is finally part of the 2% on his PC. Wintermute says he's watching me on an Xbox. GL98 is on his laptop. Can confirm I've got all your YouTube playlists downloaded from a commute. You see, this is how people are consuming stuff. No, that's not right or wrong. It's just where people are, right? So that's where we go. So So your marketing strategy needs to take into account where people are consuming stuff and what's likely to happen in the future. So audiobooks really, for me, are a big part of I've committed to making sure all my books are available as audiobooks. Right, it's just something I'm going to do. We'll talk about audiobooks a bit more next week and see how that goes. He's on his MacBook. You can still be part of the 2%. No problem, Glenn. Anyway, that's good for this evening. So thank you very much. I hope that's been interesting in terms of a bit about marketing your book. All I can say is keep plugging at it, guys. Okay, keep plugging at it, because it's one of those long burn things. Same with writing, really. So Nim Duskrin's on his laptop writing a backstory while listening to talk about writing. So there we go. But so have a good week, my friends. Keep marketing, keep writing. Marketing on. So thank you for some Bratman's giving me some cheers. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. That's very, very kind of you. That's kind of it. Just keep plugging at it, I think is the key thing. Just don't give up. Never surrender. Don't give up. And just see how it goes. So we will be back next week. We'll do some stuff on the audiobooks, I think, next week. I think that'll be quite good. And I can take you through some of the ups and downs of doing that side of the world, the next stage of doing all that sort of bits. And obviously Thursday for No Man's Sky, Friday for starters, and hopefully long time return of the retro stream on Saturday. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. Be good, my friends. Write on, market on, convention on, etc. I'll see you soon. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye now.